Now, for those of you who've been here for our series and those who are just joining in, I just want to kind of recap a little bit on what we're doing. We started this series called Family Guardrails. And the point of Family Guardrails is to encourage you to share with you some values in your life that may protect you from the dangers of this culture, the dangers that are out there. We talked about guardrails, how guardrails function in life to protect you from danger or to steer you away from it. It's to protect you or to guard you from that danger. And we need those guardrails, don't we? When we're driving on the road, we need those guardrails when we're going over an overpass, or we're going on a bridge, or we see there's some danger ahead. We like to see those guardrails because they will protect us. They protect you. And the idea of a guardrail is if you were to hit a guardrail, the damage that you would have in your vehicle would be minimal compared to the damage that you would have on your vehicle or yourself if you were to go beyond those guardrails. So they're there for a reason. They're there for you. They're there for me. They're there for us. And so in the same way, when we look to family guardrails, they're there for a reason. They're there to protect you and your family from the dangers that are ahead. And we're talking, the definition of family guardrails is this, and it is a predetermined personal or family value that becomes a matter of conscience. A predetermined personal or family value that becomes a matter of conscience. In other words, that you and I will be intentional about doing these family values in our families, so that if we were to violate them, we were to somehow not do those family values, that we would feel something deep inside of us that says, wait a minute, hold on, there's danger ahead if you continue in that road. This is not in a legalistic kind of way. This is not in a setting up rules for you. That's not what this is. This is not what it is at all. Because all this is motivated and moved by the Holy Spirit deep within you, helping you and your families. Today's topic is especially meaningful to me. It's one that's been a burden in my heart, and it's the topic of friendships. Friendships. One of those relational values there. It's a burden in my heart because if you get this one area right, you can experience success in almost every important area in your life. If you get the area of friendships right, you can experience success in other areas, like the financial area, the relationship area, the marriage area, every important area in your life, if you have your friendships right. But if you have your friendships wrong, it can lead to pain and destruction, and all of a sudden, all these areas that you struggle with may be a direct result of friendships. In Proverbs chapter 12, verse 26, it says this. It says, the righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. The righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. So in other words, that you and me, we have a responsibility to set aside these guardrails in our life, in our families. Because when we choose our friends carefully, good things happen. But when we don't, it leads them astray. We go into the danger area. We go into the danger zone. So it's very, very important that we do that. You don't meet your friends, but you choose to deepen those relationships. Right? Your best friend, your friends that you have currently, you met him by chance, quote, by chance, or God put him there, but really you had a decision to make, and that was to either go deep into those friendships or not to do that. If you think about a funnel, most of us have been in a situation where maybe your car wasn't working that well, and you had to get one of those little funnel deals, and you had to put some oil in there. Have you ever been there, had that car that's always clanking? And maybe the reason it's clanking is because you're doing what I'm saying you should do, which is to put the oil in there. You get this funnel in there, and you start putting the transmission oil or just the engine oil, right? And you use this funnel, and if you look at this funnel illustration, at the top of the funnel, you have, it's pretty big, and it starts getting narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower until you have a real small little opening in the end of it. Well, in relationships, you determine where people are in your funnel. Because when you pour that oil or water, whatever it may be, into that funnel, at the end of that funnel, something comes out, right? Something comes out of it. And in the same thing in relationships, relationships are pouring into you, and when they pour into you, it's going through this funnel of life, and at the end of that funnel, there's something that comes out of that. And that thing that comes out of it, it's either good or it's bad. It's not neutral. It's never neutral. Friendships are pouring into you something. They pour into that funnel, and depending on where your friends are in that funnel, whether they're in the outer circle or in the inner circle, that will forever change your life, and it will impact you and your life, and it will determine whether or not you keep in the safe zone or you go into dangerous places. Friendships have that much influence in your life. This is the definition of friendship. Friendships are the close relationships that lead you closer to or away from God's will. Friendships are those close relationships that lead you closer to or further away from God's will. That's friendships. Now here's two sobering truths about friendships. And the first one is this: show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Show me your friends and I will show you your future. My mom used to always say it. I'm going to say it in Spanish, not because I want to boast that I know Spanish, but because I hear still her words in my head, and she used to say, ay, mijo. It's always mijo first. Ay, mijo. You know, dime con quién estás y te diré quién eres. In other words, she would say, oh, baby son. Oh, mijo, baby son. Oh, mijo. You know, show me who you're with and I will show you who you are. And there's so much truth to that. So much truth. In Proverbs 13:20, I never knew that my mom was being biblical. It says this: walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. So show me your friends and I can show you your future. If you have friends that are wise, you will become wiser. If you have friends that are fools, you will suffer harm. You will go beyond those guardrails and you will enter into danger zones that you never thought you'd go into, or that you would thought that if you were going in there that somebody would rescue you. But if you have the wrong friends, they're not going to rescue you from that. Any success that I have personally had in my life, any of my successes, however big or small, in whatever area of my personal life, has been a direct result of friends, the right friends influencing me. I am very careful with those inner circle. And we all are, right? We allow only a certain people to speak into our lives, and any degree of success that you or I have is because of that inner circle. Is that inner circle in that little funnel. Who is in your inner funnel? Almost every time, without a fail, almost every time that I get in trouble, it was because of my friends. You know, it was because of my friends. Investing or influencing me somehow, and it's that little funnel. You add into it, and at the end of that funnel, something comes out of it. And when it's harm, and I look into my life, it's because of the friends that I had in my life. And maybe some people are out there thinking, when I was young, that I was the friend that was leading them astray. And maybe you're like, oh, that's me. I want you to do something right now. Just right there in your sermon notes, I want you to, on the side of it, put your closest friends. Make a list. Put your 5 closest friends. Write them down somewhere in there. These are outside the family friends. The imaginary friends don't count. So don't put them in there. Some of you are like, oh man, come on. I got plenty of those. Who are your 5 friends? What are your 5 closest friends in your life? Let me tell you something. Whatever friend popped in your head or you put down, you jotted down, that friend or those friends, they have an immense amount of influence in your life. How you do your finances, how you do your parenting, how you do your marriage, how you do life in general will be largely impacted by those friends that you just thought about. Those friends. Like it or not, you become who you run with. As a matter of fact, you become who you run with. Who are you running with? Sociologists say that that in America, every American has about an average of 2 friends. So you're like, only pick 2. Don't worry, that's the majority of us. And so many are relieved. It's like, oh, thank goodness, I don't have 5, but that's okay. Average American has 2. 25% of Americans don't have a single friend. 25%. Did I hear an aw? Aw. Cammy, like, oh, pobrecitos. Who are your friends? Who are your friends? Because they do influence you. Show me your friends and I can show you your future, where you will be in life. The second sobering truth about friendship is this, and it is that it's impossible to live the right life when you have the wrong friends. It is impossible to live the right life when you have the wrong friends in your life. Paul put it this way in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33. He was telling this to the Corinthians, and he said this, do not be misled. And maybe you recognize this, parents. It's like, oh, it's biblical what I say. Bad company corrupts good character. Have you ever heard that before or said it before? This is where it's from. Bad company corrupts good character. And you may be here thinking, well, I mean, how about Jesus? I mean, he had friends. He was friends of sinners, right? So does Jesus fall into the same category? You know, did Jesus befriend people? I just want to let you know that when you look at the character, nature, and life of Jesus, when you look at Jesus, he was a friend of sinners. He was a friend of sinners. But guess what? He had how many around him every time? 12. He had 12 friends in his outer funnel. He would go away, from the crowds to hang out with the 12. And then he had what? How many personal friends did Jesus have? He had 3 in the inner circle. Even Jesus understood that principle. He had 3 close friends of his. The Pharisees, what did he do? He kept them at arm's length. They weren't close to him. He loved them. He loved people that didn't have it together, but they were at arm's length as well. He withdrew from the cross to do that. For some of you this morning, this will be one of the most difficult messages you can hear. And the reason is because you will have to, for some of you, redefine what level your friends get to participate in your life. For some of you, the friends that you have in your outer circle, God may, after this morning, be saying, you need to get closer with those friends and they need to be part of your inner circle. For some of you, it's the reverse. You've been having friends in your inner circle and they've been dangerous for you. And you know it. And after this morning, you might start realizing, I need to begin to put those friends in a different place in my life. Put boundaries. Put guardrails. So this morning, I want to spend the rest of the message talking about the 3 types of friends every person needs. The 3 types of friends every person needs. And the way we're going to do this, I'm going to look at the life of David, because David is such a neat character to follow in Scripture. David is a man after God's own heart. He's a man after God. He loves God so much. And David experiences a lot of success in his life. A lot of success. More than I can really count. He had a lot of success in his life. But he also had this one major failure in his life. Major failure. But along the way, David, the shepherd boy, teenage boy, that was a shepherd, would one day become the king of Israel. And in that journey from teenager, courageous teenager, to king of a nation, he would have friends in his life. A certain type of friend and friends in his life that encouraged him along the way. The right people in his life helped him become the right purpose, the right person in life. The right people in his life helped him become the right person that God wanted him to become. So I want you to go to 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 12. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 12. And I just want to give you a little context here before we really unpack that first point. So let's get that first point out of there. So there you go. We'll get it back now. Some of you are like, oh man, I didn't write it down. Don't worry, I'll get it back to it. Just to give you a little context here, there was a king by the name of Saul over the nation of Israel. And Saul was he was a king that was chosen by the people. The people wanted a king. God said, all right. And so they chose a man by the name of Saul. Saul ended up becoming a king. Saul wasn't the greatest king. Along the way, Saul did some things that were inappropriate for a man who was supposed to represent the living God in that country. And so he disobeyed God so many times, and then one day God just said, enough. I'm going to replace King Saul with someone else, but I'm not going to do it just yet. It's going to be progressive. Eventually, I'm going to replace him. And so God speaks to a prophet by the name of Samuel, and he tells Samuel, I want you to go find the next king, and I want you to go to this town over there. So Samuel goes into this town, and he is connected with a person by the name of Jesse. Jesse has multiple kids. And so Samuel sees the older son of Jesse, and he says, that's going to be king, I'm sure. And God says, whoa, wait a minute. I don't judge people the way you do. You judge them by outward appearance. I really judge people by their content of their heart. And so Samuel at that point had to be dependent on God. Who are you going to choose, God? Who are you going to choose, God? And he just goes through the list of sons that Jesse has, and it's not this, and it's not that, it's not this, and the dad says, how about this one? No, that's not it. How about this one? No, that's not it. And at the end of that list, Samuel's like, do you have another kid? And is there another kid other than these? And Jesse says, yeah, there's one more. He's out, he's a sheep herder. He's out there somewhere. He says, we'll bring him over here. And they bring David. Is brought into the scene. The guy that, by the way, the father didn't really think that he would amount to much. He brings him to Samuel. And this is Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 12. Then the Lord said, rise and anoint him. This is the one. David. Teenager David. Teenager. This is the one. Verse 13, so Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Every person needs a friend who makes you better. Every person needs a friend that makes you better. There's not a single person in that little group that believed that David was the man that would become one day king, except for Samuel. Except for Samuel. Samuel would later become a friend of David, and he would help him in his journey, but Samuel believed that God was going to do something unique with this man by the name of David, and he was there, and he would make him better because he thought he'd be king, because he knew it. And maybe God has put a man or a woman in your heart to be the Samuel in their life, and that you would help be a friend to someone so that they could be better. Or maybe it's the other way around. There's somebody in your life that God has already moved and is shaping to put in your life so that you could be better. Your buddies at your office, who's the one, if any, that makes you better? The guys or girls at the gym, who's the one that makes you better? The moms in soccer and football, who's the one that makes you better? Your friends in school, who's the one that makes you better? Who's the one that makes you better? Think about the people around you, the current friend list that you had. Do they make you better? Do they help you become closer to God? Do they help you in your marriage and your relationships? Do they help you think through things? Or are they really just a waste of your time in terms of making you better? Proverbs 27 verse 17, Proverbs 27:17 says this. It says, as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. Who's sharpening you in your life? Who is sharpening you in your life? So not only do you need a friend who makes you better, but you also need a friend that helps you find spiritual strength. You need a friend in your life that helps you find spiritual strength. David, the person that would become king, he's not king yet, and so he's moving into that journey of becoming king, and nobody knows this really. Very few people know this. Not even David knows how he's going to become king. Nobody knows this, how he's going to become king. Nobody knows that David is the one to become king. Samuel does know that. And along the way, what happens is he starts doing some stuff, and he begins to see success. And Saul, the current king, there's chants about him. Oh, he killed 1,000. And then people start chanting about David. You know what they're saying about David? He killed how many? 10,000. And this is before he becomes king. And the point there is that as he's growing, becoming the man that God has intentioned him to become, he begins to experience the wrath of Saul, King Saul, because he gets intimidated and he tries to kill him. He starts chasing after him. And Saul has a son by the name of Jonathan. And Saul, like any king of his day, would have thought that Jonathan was going to become king. And so he begins to see and get jealous of David, and he wants him killed. But he starts seeing this relationship between Jonathan and David that he does not like at all. 1 Samuel chapter 23, verse 15, go there. As David is running for his life, literally, because Saul wants his life dead. We see this. 1 Samuel chapter 23, verse 15, it says, while David was at Horesh in the desert of Ziph, he learned that Saul had come out to take his life. Pause there for just a moment. I mean, David is kind of really close with Saul. He used to minister to him with worship music. He used to help him along the way, and now he's realizing that the king himself wants him dead. Verse 16, and Saul's son, Jonathan, went to David. Keep in mind, Jonathan is the son of Saul. He went to David at Horesh and helped him find strength in God. You know, even the closest people to God get discouraged, experience temptation. At the very moment when David is experiencing an immense amount of depression and heaviness because the king himself is after his neck, Jonathan appears at his doorstep and says, he strengthens him. He says he strengthened him in God. Who's the person in your life that when you feel down, they come alongside of you and says, man, let me just help you. Man, God has purpose in your life. God is going to help you through this. Who's that person in your life that when you feel alone, he comforts you or she comforts you? That encourages you through Scripture or says, man, let me pray for you? Who's the person in your life that prays for you? Do you have this in your life? Do you have the person in your life that speaks spiritual truth into your life? Because you might be one friend away from changing and altering the course of your destiny. One friend away. Everyone needs a person that strengthens you spiritually. Do you have that? Number 3, every person needs a friend who tells you the truth. Every person needs a friend that tells you the truth. David finally becomes king, and it's interesting because once you become a king, or you become a boss, or you become the manager, you become the person in the top of the ladder, whatever, in whatever area there might be, it gets even harder for people to tell you the truth. You know, it becomes extremely hard for people to do that for whatever reason, intimidation or whatever it may be. It becomes really, really hard for them to be truthful to you, and you need friends that are going to be truthful to you. And David is going to need that. Finally, he becomes king, and along the way, he sees this beautiful woman, and he says, man, oh, man, I like her, you know, she's pretty, you know, but he's got a wife, you know, and she's got a husband, and oops, he sees her bathing, you know, Like, how is that an oops? I don't know. But he sees her bathing, and he's like, man, call her for her. And one of his friends from his administration says, hey, isn't she married? And I was like, yeah, well, bring her anyway. So he brings her. He has sex with her. As a result, she gets pregnant, but she has a husband that was in the military. He's out in the military. He comes back from the military. She goes to David and says, I'm pregnant. He gets a little frightened on that. So he says, okay, let me try and get him drunk so he can go with his wife and have sex with her, so that the baby, they can get confused and they think that it's his. But he's so loyal to the military. He says, no way, man. My friends are dying out there in war. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to go to my wife. I will stay here on your doorstep. He says, dude, drink some more beer. Go out with your wife, take her to a club. I don't know what happens in that time. Take her to a club or something. Take her to the nicest restaurant, and so he says, no way. And so he says, all right, now go ahead, go into the military. He calls his commander-in-chief. He says, go and put him in the front line. Kill the guy. And David kills the guy. He calls for his death. And he says, bring this woman to me. He marries this woman and has a son with this woman. And nobody is the wiser. Nobody knows that son is actually his. And he thinks he's escaped it all. He thinks in his mind, I'm sure, you know what? I'm free. My dirty little secret that I just killed someone because of my sin, and my dirty secret that I was fooling around with a woman that was not mine, that was married, it's all put to the past. And then you have a friend, Nathan. 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 7. Then Nathan, remind you, Nathan is a prophet of God. And he's about to go to the king. The guy who with this is dead. And Nathan goes before David, and he gives him an illustration. A comical illustration. You ought to read it yourself. He says, there was a rich guy, and there was a poor guy, and the poor guy got a lamb, and he used to sleep with the lamb. It was like a pet to him. And then the rich guy comes, and he takes the little lamb away and takes it for himself. And Nathan says, what should a man do? And he says, the guy who took the lamb away, man, he should pay for that. Angry, incensed, David says, the guy who took something that didn't belong to him should pay for that. And then smart Nathan says to David, you are the man. But that what he was saying is, you're the man who took something that didn't belong to you. You are him. That's a friend. That's a friend. A friend is the one that tells you the truth. Even knowing that even if he or she tells you the truth, you may react with anger. You might say, get away from me. I don't want to be your friend. A friend tells the truth. He exposed them. Who's your truth teller in your life? Who's the friend that will tell you the truth? That will say, hey, watch out. If you continue in that path, this is where I see, Who's the friend in your life that's a guardrail for you, that when the friend sees that you're crossing a boundary, that you're going into dangerous places, who's the friend that says, dude, you're kidding yourself if you think this is going to turn out good? And it's not afraid or scared to confront you and say in a loving way to say, watch out. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 5 says, an open rebuke is better than hidden love. Wounds from a sincere friend are, say it with me, are what? Better. Say it with me. Better. Wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from an enemy. Isn't that interesting that he says the wounds of a friend are better? Wounds, because it hurts, doesn't it? It hurts when somebody shares with you the truth, and man, it's just hard to take. For some of you, you're so relationally poor, you don't have your truth teller in your life. You might be even surrounded by people that wouldn't expose your weakness because they're doing it themselves. They don't want to expose your addiction because they're addicted too. You may have friends that they're doing the same old thing that you were doing when you didn't know Christ, and they're doing the same thing. And of course they wouldn't expose you. They wouldn't talk to you about your truth because they're too concerned about they also doing the same thing. And you might be one friendship away from a better marriage. You might be one friendship away from leaving depression. You might be one friendship away from overcoming addiction. You might be one friendship away from getting into better shape. You might be one friendship away from meeting Christ or being a stronger leader. One friendship away from getting those things. So what do you do? What do you do when you have people in your inner circle and you're realizing that they're too close to you? And I'm not talking about defriending people. I'm not talking about not loving on people. That's not what I'm saying, because God has given you a calling to continue to reach people for Jesus Christ. And so how do you have them be in the outer circle? Still a friend, but not the friend that influences you, the outer circle of your funnel. How do you do that? Here's two indicators that you can go by in order for you to determine who's in that category that you must give the loving boot to put in the outer circle. Here's two indicators, and the first one is this: those friends that distract me from God's plan. Those friends that distract me from God's plan. It's the friend that says, man, you don't need to go to church, or you don't need to give, man. What are you talking about? You don't need to serve. Man, who do you think? You're a holy roller. Those are the kind of friends that need to be in the outer funnel. It's a friend that says, that is all about popularity. It's all about the party. It's all about the drinking. It's all about all this other stuff that you have in this inner circle that's, you might be wanting to put, and you should put in your outer circle. Those who mind God more than they mind men are the ones that you need. The second indicator is those who continually tempt me to sin. Those who continually tempt me to sin. It's those that continually challenge you, and they're into the whole gossip or trash talking. The friends that you think their friends are trash talking, man, maybe they don't need to be in your inner circle. It's the friend that says, hey dude, did you check out the hot girl? Or did you check out the sexy guy? Maybe it's those kind of friends that you're not defriending, but that you're putting in a different circle. And maybe for some of you, you're going to have that conversation that says, I love you, I care about you, but I can't go the same road that you're going. I love you, I care for you. But the worst thing you can do, though, is to become the religious snob, right? Because you're thinking already, that's rubbing in your mind, like, maybe I don't want to be perceived as I'm too good for you. And I'm not talking about being too good for anybody, but to be the religious snob, because Jesus still loved people. And you never say that Jesus was a religious snob, because you still can't lose a heart for people. And God still calls you to reach people. But you might be the one that's a better friend to that person that's not a good friend for you. Where are you at in life? As you reflect back into your list, who do you need to let further into your funnel? Who needs to be further out in your funnel? Let's pray.